Hello, everyone. Welcome to C-Suite Talks. We speak with industry leaders, introducing you to some of the most interesting people and businesses today. We're focused on women, money, and power, and as well as diversity in all areas. Welcome to C-Suite Talks. I'm Beth Hilbing, co-CEO of C-Suite, along with...
Hi, I'm Dianne Gubin, co-CEO, along with Beth. And this week, we are so happy we're speaking with Dr. Natacha Nelson. Dr. Natacha Nelson, first of all, she's a C-Suite member, so thank you, Natasha. And she's got a great bio, so I'm just going to give it a read for anybody who's just listening and not reading this. So Dr. Natasha is a high-performance educator and specialist, as well as a mental health and emotional literacy consultant. She integrates mental and somatic health in business, sports, and life. Dr. Natacha's mission is to help bridge unseen gaps as well as to remove subconscious barriers to unlock higher levels of performance and fulfillment in every facet of life. Oof, we love that. So hang on. Dr. Natacha specializes in empowering organizational leaders and their teams, as well as individuals through workshops and coaching sessions. Her approach is rooted in the belief that true well-being encompasses a harmonious blend of physical, mental, nutritional, emotional, and spiritual health. Her work and services include holistic healing and wellness coaching, personal development and transformation programs, spiritual psychology, addiction recovery and support, mindfulness and meditation training. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to find out more. Welcome, Dr. Natacha, and thank you to our listeners.
Thank you so, Dianne and Beth and C-Suite. And as you're reading, I'm like captivated. I'm like, oh wow, who is this person? Gosh, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that's me. Sometimes it's wow. So thank you for that amazing introduction.
So tell us, how do you become a life doctor?
So I'm a chiropractor by trade, and I had a private practice. And I started 25 years ago. And I knew when I was like second grade, I wanted to be a doctor. I loved people, but I loved their story. I wanted to understand why people do what they do. And it was really the first year in practice where it was like school taught me how to be a great, clinician, diagnostician, all that. But it was really looking and being with patients where different people could show up with the same injuries and same things, but some people were healing and some weren't. And it really started to make me question, like, well, why do some people heal faster? What's going on? And the digging into the emotions, the mind, the body, the spirit, the connection, all of that. And I remember one of my patients, she was introducing me to a friend, and I ran into her and she goes, oh, this is Dr. Natacha. She's more than a doctor. She's like my life doctor. And I remember hearing it and I was just it resonated with me. And I put it on the back burner and I didn't use that term until probably a decade later, where I went back and got my master's in spiritual psychology because I understood I wanted to be able to go deeper with people and really help on all levels of health. And that's when I brought up the life doctor. When she said that, it was still so powerful to me. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that's what the coaching part of what I do. It's all about the whole life and the whole doctor and mind, body, spirit. Everything is connected. Philosophy too. That's where I'm at.
That's fabulous. So what's your approach on philosophy, health, and well-being for female executives today?
Yeah, what about us women?
Yeah.
Yes. And so much of what I work with women is, starting with my own experience and what I've seen over the decades with women. And my philosophy is so much about the whole body and the whole health. Because women, as women, man, we are extraordinary and we do so much. And, I think I see so much with women where this idea of drive and purpose and focus and what we're doing and doing so much. And somewhere in there, we also seem to think that we're supposed to be like the men and get more done and very logical and practical, which is important, but dismissing the emotional component of what makes us so much more. And the philosophy of how I work with women now is we've been taught to push emotions aside or get rid of them and don't have them in the boardroom and God forbid in the workplace. And I come from a place of, but if you suppress your feelings and emotions, you are discounting an important part, but it's actually what leads to, what drains our energy. It leads to illness. It leads to illness, disease, dysfunction by suppressing it. And so my philosophy is we got to take all of the energy that we use to push down our emotions and bring it all back and use it to our advantage, which requires the emotional literacy component of, well, what are emotions? How do we use them to our benefit so that we're not acting out or lashing out or just, boohooing and crying in the boardroom? And there's a place for that. So it was really that I started to see, because if we repress it, suppress it, it's going to cause injury or illness and dysfunction in us physically, which leads to burnout and leads to so many other things. So that's kind of the whole philosophy of all the 5 pillars of health and how to take them and line them up to what we're doing and our purpose, and in a sustainable way, so that our life is we don't want to get, trying to get to the end and hurry up to the other side of it. We want to enjoy it in the process and be a part of it while we're living it.
Mhm. Very beautiful. You know what? Everything you're saying so resonates. Beth and I were talking to somebody the other day who is in professional services, and she was telling us about how type A the partners were in that firm and how little control she had within the environment. So, yeah, and just how unhappy she was. So I think what you're saying, it just is the whole thing that you talk about with stress and burnout.
Yeah, I do a lot of work with burnout, because burnout is actually, it's really part of the first sign and the first something that, as women, if we're really in tune with it, we start to realize if we don't pay attention, we're going to end up something else bigger later down the road. And burnout is that anything where it just feels tired. We feel like we're trying to push, we're trying to do more, and just exhausted. Our body, we're meant to be able to sleep and feel rejuvenated and wake up in the next morning and do our day. But when we wake up tired, then we feel like we have to push or do more, or, how many energy drinks or coffee or whatever it is to get through the day, that over time, it starts to drain our energy, and then it shows up in so many areas.
Uh-oh, I'm on years of this.
So how did you come to this path? What was your own personal experience that led you to this?
Yeah.
Yes, and I know you went to the University of the spiritual psychology. So tell us all.
Yeah, University of Santa Monica. So that's all tied in. So I was about 15 years into having my practice, and I was, I'd say I would start at 7 a.m., but if somebody was like, hey, can I come at 6:45? I'd be like, yeah, okay, sure. And they'd be like, well, can I come at 6:30 in the morning so I can beat traffic and get to work in LA? I'd be like, yeah, sure. And then I realized like I would let them come later, and then I was on the weekends. And after 15 years, and being a single mom, and I was taking care of my mom who was, ill at the time. And I was just in this place of, well, I have to do this, and I have to do more, and I have to do it better, and I have to keep all of the balls up in the air, and I have to be really good at it. And if something, if I drop a ball, my whole life is going to fall apart. And it was this experience of pushing and pushing to the point where my body just said, well, we're done. If you're not going to stop, I'm going to make you stop. And in the course of, about 10 days, I went and I had a knee injury, a back injury. I had the flu, and I was like, okay, I guess it's time for me to stay in bed. And my mind was like, oh, I'll stay in bed for like a week and just get fine and be fine, and it'll be fine. And well, 6 months later, I was just finally able to get back out of bed. And by then I had, my practice had gone down. But in that 6 months, it was really just looking at my life, really reevaluating my life and what am I doing, and why am I doing this? And why am I pushing so hard to the point of just ignoring my body, ignoring what it's telling me? And during that time, gosh, just getting out of bed and trying to get in the shower was hard. And I did a lot of journaling. And that was the time where I had completed my education at University of Santa Monica. So that was a master's in spiritual psychology. And I remember when we graduated, our instructors, Ron and Mary Holnick, they were just like, just because you're done doesn't mean you're done. And I was like, oh, I'm feeling good. I'm ready to go. Like, I'm ready to take on the world. And that year after that was when, oh my gosh. So those 6 months, I did a lot of writing and a lot of journaling, and I had to be really honest and have some really deep, hard conversations with myself, and realizing that the burnout for me and the symptoms, but it was driven by these unconscious beliefs, and these beliefs of, I have to be perfect, I have to be better, I have to succeed at a certain level to be valued, all of these beliefs that were running the show, that were part of why I didn't have boundaries, and why I would work on Saturdays and then Sundays, and, 7 a.m., 6 a.m., 8, 9 p.m., like nonstop. And so I think so much of what I see when I'm speaking about burnout and illness, I recognize it because I lived it, and seeing that there's a time to push and then there's a time to pause. And for me, there was also the time where I needed to pivot and shut down my practice and figure out a new way, a new life, and a new operating system. And all of those things took me about those 6 months of being in bed, and not because I wanted to be, because my body just wouldn't let me get up and go.
And you said you were a single mom during that?
And a single mom during all this. And my mom had moved in for a little bit, and we thought it was just going to be temporary. And then it turned into permanent, because once I started to feel better, then my mom was really ill. So taking care of her. And so it was really that time that life was changing. And the hardest part was feeling like I had no control over it. Life was just changing, and I had to learn how to adapt and learn how to be different and learn how to recognize, okay, well, I have to sleep right now, and I need to eat well, and I need to journal, and I need to, all of the things that I knew intellectually, but it's not until I had to actually put them in practice and put them in place and experience them all the way through to the other side, where that time in which I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm finally ready and able to start over. And that was that 6 month journey of like, I'm starting over. And that's what led to really the Life Doctor came to life, and the coaching and the workshops, because then I ended up shutting down my practice and permanently not wanting to go back.
Wow.
So you wrote a book. Tell us about your book.
Oh, yeah. So during those 6 months, and it had started as part of my project at University of Santa Monica, called USM. It was part of the project of, I wanted to just write. And I didn't know I was going to write a book, like publish one. I just wanted to write stuff. And I wanted to write a book for my daughter. And so during this time of being in bed, I was writing all of it. And it was therapeutic. And I think I was allowed to do that for the first time. And I gave myself permission, because I'm like, well, I'm not going to publish this book, so it doesn't matter whatever.
Surprise.
And then I was like, I would finish writing, and then there'd be something on the page. I was like, oh, this is good. I'm going to save it and save it for my daughter. So I collected a binder of all of the good wisdom things and wanted to share it. And then it turned into, oh, well, I guess I'm going to type them up, because she's not going to be able to read my handwriting, and I want to make it pretty. And then a friend of mine, I showed her some of the pages, and she was like, oh my gosh, you need to write this. And I'll go, yeah, I am writing it. And she's like, no, you need to write it and publish it in a book. And it took me some time. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. And then it was like, well, maybe. And I was like, well, I'll just put it out there on the self-help, but I'll do it as a self-publishing, but I'm not going to share it with anybody. I won't tell anybody about it. So I wouldn't have to worry about anybody reading it. Because really what happened is, as I got through the whole book of writing it and then editing it and the editors went through it, there was a time where I finally got to where the publishers, I had to say, like, I accept and I submit and sign it. And by the time I had done all the work of writing it and I got to that point, I was actually at peace with it all of my life story and the failures and the hard things of life no longer felt so emotionally charged that I was no longer afraid to share it. So then I was like, sure, go ahead, publish it. Like, great, share it, read it. And then I realized it was such a tool that my story made a difference and helped other people. But I realized it really came from because I was able to share from a place of the lessons that I got from it and of life experiences. It wasn't just a woe is me, life is hard, kind of book. It was, and this is what I got from it. So, but it was really about the emotionally releasing so much, which is so in line with all of the healing that I was doing from that place of burning out, because that's what I was realizing. All of those beliefs and those limiting things, when I finally let those go, I was finally able to stop all of my energy leaks that were going in unconscious places and all these things that I was doing that was sucking the life out of me, literally, and once I wrote the book and once I was done, all that energy started to come back to me, and the healing and the sharing and then the work, everything started from that book and was really the big pivot for me.
Oh my gosh. So for the women, our female listeners, what are the hints that you can give us, or what are some of the takeaways that you've either come through the book or your studies in terms of avoiding burnout and then recovering from it? Because listen, nobody wants to spend 6 months in bed.
Right.
So shortcut us so we don't have to.
So shortcut, because it's really about being willing to feel your feelings, as I say, or your body will feel them for you. Feeling your feelings doesn't mean dumping them out on everybody. It just means being willing to have them. And I like to write. I still write and journal. Just like I brush my teeth every day, I do emotional hygiene every day with my journal. And so being in tune with what I feel and understanding my feelings means they don't build up and it doesn't collect physically to the point where it completely knocks you out. So the takeaway is, if you spend, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 20 minutes every day, just going, oh my gosh, what am I feeling? How is this working for me? Okay. You don't have to share it with anybody, but it's just acknowledging that they're there. And the more you do that, you start noticing patterns. And when you start realizing the patterns, that's when you start noticing, hey, you know what? I might be angry a lot, or I might feel jealousy a lot. That's when you start to go, well, maybe I need to understand what's that about. Then you can spend more time with how to use it to your advantage so that it doesn't drain you so much. So that would be the number one, like one of the most important things of takeaways is pay attention and be willing to feel the feelings when they're small and when they're there, and not stuff them away to all of a sudden they blow up or you completely shut down and your body stops.
Wow. Okay.
Wow,
That sounds
huge.
great.
That's
So
huge. Well,
I get,
wait.
oh,
Before you go on, at the end, you have all these notebooks. So do you just keep them in a
Yeah.
box or do you burn them? Like, what do you do with them at the
So
end?
yeah. So I actually don't write in journals anymore. I write on freeform paper, binder paper, like, because I write when I realize that there are times I don't even really know when I'm writing. There'll be some good nuggets in there. So I will keep the binder pages in a binder and collect those. Everything else, I will shred it and get rid of it. And not to reread any of the brain dumping part. Because if you're brain dumping it, you're trying to get it out of your system. You don't want to read it and put it all back in. You kind of know
oh,
when
I
you
see.
get something good at the end. It usually takes the layers and you get to the end and you're like, oh, that's actually really good. It could be a good sentence or paragraph. Great. Keep it, look at that only, and everything else discard it. You don't need to keep that around. And it's also what will allow you to be completely honest and free is if you know that nobody else will ever read what you wrote unless you want them to.
Love it.
So important because that's the permission to write. Like I've had pages where it's just F-bombs, and I've had pages of everything that I hate and people, places, things, because I had to get it out. And I had to have the freedom to know nobody else was going to read it.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, tell us about your podcast.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So this creative idea that I had of my podcast, which is called Above, Down, Inside Out, which is really in alignment with the chiropractic philosophy, which is health comes from the above, down, and inside out. And it really, the premise is that our body knows what to do. And intuitively, we also know what we're supposed to do if we're willing to listen and pay attention. And so I take the 5 pillars of health, the physical, chemical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and I'll take one topic in one of those pillars. So every episode is just one thing. It could be 10 minutes. It could be 20 minutes. It could be on, nutrition. It could be on like how to read food labels. It could be on understanding anxiety or addiction. So I take one thing and break it down in a way that's digestible to go, oh, that makes sense. So I dissect a little bit, give questions, give thoughts, and give a different context, especially around the emotions, to give definitions that make sense on how to use them. So that was the above, down, inside out is very much the chiropractic philosophy, spiritual philosophy, and that I had to come back to. It's like I got rid of my practice, which was actually called Inside Out, and came back to this. And this was my way of really kind of tying all of my life experiences back together. So I'm really
Oh my
excited
gosh.
about it. I'm super, I love it. It's on all of the, like all the platforms, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube,
Yeah.
everywhere. So it's everywhere. You can just look at it that way. It's with my name spelled with a C. Yeah, so very excited. So I definitely want to share that for sure.
Terrific, terrific. Well, Dr. Natacha Nelson, it has just been a pleasure having you. We really thank you. We thank our listeners. We've all learned so much. I can't wait to watch you bloom over the next few years. Beth, do you want to talk about our sponsors?
Yes, we can't do this without our sponsors, of course. And we have City National Bank, Uncle Nearest, a female-owned whiskey company, Nutanix, AI, and data center software, All Springs Global Investments, Co-Brands, a fine spirits and wine distribution company, and then, of course, C-Suite Search, executive search. So if you're hiring for your team, call us, and please find us on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you find your podcast. Leave us a review, 5 stars, of course. Follow us on social media, all the platforms. And then, of course, check out our website for upcoming events. The podcasts are housed out there as well, www.csweet.org. And thank you so much, Dr. Natacha Nelson, for joining us today.
Thank
Wow,
you to
what
you. And
a pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation to be a guest. I have loved everything that you've offered and so grateful to be a part of this. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.